Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle and this is my wrap-up video for March Mystery Madness. I can't believe March is over already. It's been so much fun. Let's do it again. I've loved making a video every day. That has been so much fun, and I have loved chatting with you guys in the comments about these books and our favorite books. I've loved the M&M Manuscript Matchup game. That has been really fun, and I've decided to keep it going. So what I'm going to do is once a month I am going to play a round of the game as a fun way to choose kind of a surprise mystery book for the month. And so I'm going to post that video kind of at the beginning of the month, and like in that first week of the month, and that way if you want to play along and choose kind of a surprise mystery to read for the month that fits whatever prompts get pulled from the M&M's bag, then you are more than welcome to join me. I think that would be really fun. So thanks Tiffany for suggesting that. Tiffany from the Beach Bum Bookworm suggested that, and I think that's really fun. I also really loved doing the live reading sprints. That was something new for me, but I had so much fun chatting with you guys and reading together, and I loved that. And so I think I'm going to keep that up as well. I'm going to do once a month, I'm going to do live reading sprints, and I haven't figured out exactly when I'm going to do that. Probably the third or fourth Saturday of the month. I'm not entirely sure. I'll work that out, but I want to keep that going as well. So I want to tell you about the last few books that I've read to wrap this month up. But first, I need to tell you the book that I found that fit the prompts from yesterday's M&M Manuscript Matchup game. And that was to find a book that was set in a hotel and had something to do with poison. And so I'm going with Sleep by C.L. Taylor. This is set in a hotel on an island off of Scotland. And if I'm remembering correctly, poison is part of the story. So that's the one that I'm going with. And for the last two prompts on my bingo board, I read The Haunting of Maddy Clare by Simone St. James. This was for the prompt of person. This is her debut book, and one thing I did not know is that she's Canadian, so I thought that was really interesting. She's also, without question, a really good writer. I don't read a lot of ghost stories, which is what this was, but I was drawn right in, and she definitely is a really good writer. Now, this was a historical mystery that was set in the 20s in England, and our main character, Sarah, gets hired by a guy who documents ghost sightings or hauntings, and so she goes with him, and then the guy that normally works with him ends up coming as well. So the three of them have been asked to look into the ghost of Maddy Clare, who was a young servant girl. Something traumatic had happened to her. She shows up at the Clare's house, and at first she can't even speak. And then when she does start to be able to speak, she tells them that her name is Maddy, but that's it. They don't even know what her last name is, so they give her her name. She stays with them for 7 years, and then something happens and she ends up committing suicide in the barn, and since then she has been haunting the barn. So yeah, it was a full-on ghost story, but there was an interesting mystery of who she was and what happened to her. Unexpectedly, there was sex and some language, and I wasn't expecting it. Which is why I was a bit surprised, I think. And so I gave this book 3 stars because I liked it, but I didn't love it. I mean, Simone St. James can definitely write a good story. So if you like a ghost story, you might want to check out The Haunting of Maddy Clare. And then I also read my Faux Outstretched Beneath the Tree by V.C. Clinton-Baddeley. This is part of his Dr. R.V. Davies series, and he is a lecturer or a fellow or whatever the term is at Cambridge. This was published in 1968. Dr. Davies is 70, I believe, in this book, or at least in his early 70s. And he, at the very beginning of the book, he is invited to do a lecture at a women's college. and he goes and he does the lecture, and while he's there, he learns that that is where they record the language tapes for someone else that he knows who is kind of using them to teach English. And he gets to listen to one of them, and there's something unusual on the tape that kind of snatches his interest. And then he goes to London and he's staying at his club, and while he is there, another member of the club is killed, and then there's some kind of a connection to these tapes. This book unfortunately did not work for me. It is only 190 pages, and I felt like the author wasted so much time with extraneous details that weren't important to the mystery. They weren't about clues or, suspects or motives. And I just thought, this book is less than 200 pages. How do you have time for all of this stuff? It made me wonder if the author really should have just written a short story. I was also, frankly, bored through a lot of it, so I'm not going to be looking for any more by this author, unfortunately. So that one was a bit of a dud. I gave it 2 stars. I also finished Strong Poison by Dorothy L. Sayers. This was a reread for me, and this was really fun. This is where the book where Lord Peter Wimsey meets Harriet Vane, and at the beginning of the book, she is on trial for murder. And so it's just great. I mean, I like Dorothy L. Sayers. It was a good mystery. And of course, Lord Peter Wimsey falls immediately in love with Harriet Vane and decides that she's innocent, and he's going to find out who really killed the guy that she's on trial for. And so some of it's a bit silly, but overall this was a good mystery and a fun reread. Okay, so my bingo card then is all complete for the books that I read for March Mystery Madness. And then I also finished off a few short stories so that I could finish that bingo card as well. One thing to note is I realized that the Purloined Letter, which is the first short story I read in this collection, Vintage Mystery and Detective Stories, can count for the single prompt, because the Purloined Letter is about a single letter. And so I'm counting that one for the prompt of single. And then in English Country House Murders, edited by Thomas Godfrey, I read Death in the Sun by Michael Innes, and this is a short story with his detective, Inspector John Appleby, who is the detective in his long-running series. And in this one, he is visiting with, by this point, he is like near retirement, and he is a commissioner, and so he is visiting with the chief constable, and there is a dead man on the roof of his house. It's a flat roof, and they think that he's committed suicide, but the chief constable wants Appleby to look into it to see if it could have been murder. And that was an okay short story. It wasn't fabulous. It was fine. And so I read that for the prompt of weather. And then from the Oxford Book of English Detective Stories, edited by Patricia Craig, I read Marjorie Allingham's 3 is a Lucky Number for the number prompt. And this one was fantastic. I think that this was my favorite read, my favorite short story that I read this month for March Mystery Madness. It was so good. So Marjorie Allingham writes the Albert Campion stories, her amateur sleuth Albert Campion, but this one was just kind of a standalone story. And this is the first sentence. At 5 o'clock on a September afternoon, Ronald Frederick Torby was making preparations for his third murder. So good, right? Yeah, so this was fantastic. I really enjoyed that story. It was a good story. You find out right away that he's already murdered 2 of his previous wives for their money, and he's on his third, and kind of how that plays out and what happens. It's so good. I highly recommend that short story. If you can get your hands on 3 is a Lucky Number by Marjorie Allingham, it's really fun. And then I read, for the prompt of time, I read The Chimes at Midnight by Cherith Baldry. This is from Shakespearean Detectives, edited by Mike Ashley. And this is using characters from the second part of Henry IV. And so the detective in this short story is Falstaff. Now, I am not super familiar with the histories of William Shakespeare, but I am somewhat familiar with the history that they're taken from, so I sort of knew some of the people involved in this story, and I kind of have a vague understanding of who John Falstaff is. And so this is one where John Falstaff is traveling with Lord John of Lancaster and the Earl of Westmoreland with the troops, and they've had a battle and they're staying at this guy's house, and someone is murdered, and John Falstaff ends up solving the murder. And that one was only okay, and the reason for that is because the resolution was based entirely on a drunken reveal of information, and if this guy had not drunkenly revealed what he did, John Falstaff would have never figured it out. And so, I don't know, that feels like a little bit of a cheat to me, you know, relying on that level of coincidence or circumstance doesn't really do it for me. But here's my bingo card, all filled out for the short stories. So yeah, I read 9 full-length novels, and that was good. I mean, some weren't great, but some were really good. And I read 9 short stories, and that's the same. Some weren't great, but some were really good. And so overall, I had a great reading month. I read 25 books in total for the month, and 11 short stories. And so I just had a great month. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for playing along with my M&M Manuscript Matchup game. Thanks for joining me on my live reading sprints, and thanks for chatting in the comments and for all the chat that went on the Discord group. It was just a really, really fun month, and I'm already looking forward to March Mystery Madness next year. And I will see you for another video soon. Bye.